Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a long requested guest today. This thing is squeaking. Sam Shoemate, Samosaur. I don't know how you say it.
Samosaur.
You used to be one of the guys, or maybe still are, I don't know about this actually, that ran the Terminal CWO account on Instagram and elsewhere. And it was kind of like a bit of a clearinghouse for publishing fucked up shit the Army was doing, or DOD in general, I guess. And then you got out and became more visible, public, but still do the same stuff. And, you know, there's no shortage of content there because the government sucks and, you know.
Indeed.
All that. But let's start with your background a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Colorado, northern Colorado. Born in Wyoming, grew up in northern Colorado, then joined the Army at 18 and was off to the races all over the world.
Why?
Why did I join the Army?
Yeah.
To be honest, at the time, I didn't want to go to college. I was burnt out on school, and there just happened to be a Army recruiter at my school who was handing out keychains, and I was like, I want a keychain. So I signed the form, and then he contacted me, and it was kind of a light bulb moment, and I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. So wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into it. It was just sounded like a cool thing to do.
What was your first job?
You're really going to do this to me? Mm-hmm. All right. I can't lie. My first job, I was in the band.
Band? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could go straight into the band. I thought you had to get in and then try out.
I did.
Or is that, no, that's chorus.
No.
Chorus, you have to have an MOS, and then you go try out.
Yeah, and then you
chorus.
go try out.
But
no,
band,
I had to go through the auditions and everything, and you have to go. So when you go to MEPS and all that, you go audition for these parts and everything. I've been trying to keep this under wraps for years.
It's
People
too late.
know, but yeah, it's too late.
It's too late for that bullshit.
But no, basically, so music has been my thing my entire life. I thought that would be a good combination. Let me tell you, I'm going to be the worst proponent for music in the military because they're a terrible combination. But I went to the 82nd Airborne Division, and the problem with the 82nd is, and I've heard this isn't the case in every other band, but all the leadership, and I don't know the case now because I don't think they have airborne status now, but all the leadership are like former infantry or engineers or something like that.
They're not musicians?
No, they are. They're musicians. They've OJT'd, then gone through the school, and they come over, but they all want to be hard like the 82nd, and so we were always trying to be hard like the 82nd Airborne Division.
Yeah.
Always had to be Strack, and it was really stupid. I didn't have a problem with that aspect of it, but I had a problem with the music side of it. So I got out and was out for about a year in the National Guard. And when I came back in, I went intel, and been doing that ever since.
What instrument did you play?
I played the trumpet. So I came in, my first unit was in 2003, 82nd, and keep in mind, we had just invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
And so right off the bat, we have guys coming back, in coffins. And it was actually pretty hard for me because my brother died January 1st of 2003. I was actually on leave in the middle of AIT. And so my first funeral was in, I want to say April or May of that year. And I'll never forget, I start playing taps. And I can't remember where we were at. I think we were in Wyoming or something, but I started playing taps, and I just heard this dude's mom start wailing. And I was like, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, but it was one of those things over the years. I played hundreds of funerals, just going to active duty, going all over the place, doing veterans funerals, stuff like that. And so I take a lot of pride in that. I didn't like the job aspect of it, but doing the funerals, given that last rites and honors, it was important.
Yeah, there's I got conned into doing color guard a couple times just because you either start short or get short in the 82nd because of all the weight and jumps and shit. I didn't really jump that much myself, but I lost 3/4 of an inch from the time I was only in for 5 years, but I didn't really measure myself until 5 years after I got out. But the damage it did to my back cost me 3/4 of an inch. over time. But I was still around 6 foot at the time, so, you know,
I was
Hey,
6'3" and I'm 6'2" now.
yeah, it's like, hey, dipshit, go fucking march. I'm like, oh my god, this is gay. I hate this so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of funerals.
Oh,
Mostly change of commands though. I did Lloyd Austin's change of command when he took over 18th Airborne Corps, and I knew then that he was a turd.
Yeah.
Because it was cold out. It was like February, but it was in North Carolina. So how cold is it going to get? It's like 35 degrees maybe. And he's bundled up like it's a goddamn apocalypse. I'm like, you're a fucking general, dude.
Right.
Like you should be out. Like I remember my one of my drill the first sergeant of my company in basic would walk around in cami pants and a t-shirt, and it's fucking freezing out, and he's just got his hands stuffed down in front of his pants looking at us like, you gotta train your body to ignore the cold, you fucking pussies. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, dude. This sucks. That's what I expect
Yeah.
a leader to be like. Even if you mentioned the 82nd has this proclivity to be hard for no reason, which is very true. Like we have one of my company commanders is like, we're gonna go run through Area J. I'm like, all right, cool. We're going to keep it nice and slow, right? Because it's sand, you know? He's like, nah, 7-minute pace. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, we're all
Yeah.
going to die, you fucking idiot.
Oh, that was the thing in the band too. We'd go out there and we'd run 10 miles every morning, and I'm like, why are we doing this?
Yeah,
But
it's
that's just what
really
you do.
just no
the culture.
no purpose for that shit at all. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny. So when you went to Intel, you were prior enlisted.
Yeah.
What rank did you reach before?
I got promoted to sergeant in September of 2005. Got out that next May-ish. And you keep in mind that that mindset in the 82nd, if you've never been in the 82nd, it's about the basic. It's about the closest thing I can compare it to the Marine Corps. All right, it's just the standards and locking everything in. It was so you had this mindset that everybody else who didn't wear a maroon beret was trash.
Yeah,
everybody else was a leg. They were filthy. Their service didn't matter and everything else. And that's the mindset of the 82nd. And so I got out and I did the National Guard, and holy crap, that was a wake up moment, dude.
Yeah, because like there's a lot of turds out there.
Oh, Guard was rough. I remember my first experience. There was a PFC. He's got his Gore-Tex open. He's just chilling, and I was like, "Hey, zip it up or take it off." I'm still in that E5 mode or whatever. And he goes, "Why?" Because I told you to. That mindset of what do you? But that was the Guard, and then I experienced a whole different army after that, I guess. But yeah,
yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I came back in as an E5. And I really didn't know how to wear the rank because I didn't really feel like I'd been in the Army, even though we did all the dumb Army stuff.
Yeah.
And so learning how to be the NCO I wanted to be took a while, which I'm sure it does for anybody. But
yeah, I mean, you learn from watching the dudes around you mostly.
Yeah.
And if you go to a place that sucks, then it becomes. I mean, you know how to be a good dude, but aside from that,
I learned what not to be for
yeah.
a long time. Until I found some really solid dudes who showed me what to be.
What was your job specifically? Which branch of Intel?
So I was all source analyst.
What's that MOS 90? Oh, back then it would have been 96.
At the time it was 96 Bravo.
96 Bravo.
And then it switched halfway through my
like 35
AIT to 35 Fox, and then I ended up as a warrant, so that's 350 Fox. And I held every type of job you can imagine. I did. Just normal S2 crap where you're doing security clearances and all that nonsense to, I went to 7th Group and I did, I worked crime for a year in Mexico where we were tied into what the DEA was doing and all that stuff. And that was a bit different. And then I went to 4th Battalion where we deployed and 4th Battalions across the regiment were, the Jedburgh groups. So when we got back, they quickly pivoted into doing the Jedburgh stuff. And I went over to a different company, which I won't say on here, but you know what it is. But anyways, I went to this other company and I did signature reduction for 2 years. And I worked for the Office of Special Warfare out of Bragg Satellite. And that gave me a whole different, got to see over the other side of the fence into the, whatever you want to call that realm, the dark realm. And then I went warrant. And so So interesting story with that. The reason I went warrant is there was quite a few reasons, but I was a sergeant first class at the time. I've been a sergeant first class 3 years, and I contacted my branch manager and I was like, "Hey, I want to go somewhere else." He just laughed at me and he was like, "Dude, you guys are at 85% strength. You're not going anywhere." And that frustrated me. So I started looking into options, but we were talking to USASOG G2 at the time, and we were supposed to be on the DASSER. So if you don't know what the DASSER is, it's the Department of Army Special Roster. It's where they put all the cool guys on so that they're not in the system. Everything's on paper. They were supposed to protect us because we're doing this other job, and it's not to protect our identities or anything like that, but it's to keep us safe from. We're basically working outside of our job field. I'm doing a job that is not making me competitive in the all-source analytical realm. I'm doing this other thing. And so they kept telling us, yeah, your paperwork's on the G2's desk any day now, any day now. So turn in my packet. It doesn't get approved the first time. It gets picked up the second time. I go through warrant course. And then, sure enough, everybody gets picked up on the DASSER. I was like, So I don't regret it. I loved being a warrant, but kind of wish I'd have known what that other side looked like a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So
What's that? So I imagine you go to not just AIT again when you come back from the guard, but as you get promoted, and in the infantry we just go to like infantry. It used to be called infantry basic. Or IOBC was for the officers, infantry officer basic leader course, and then there's there's a different like BNOC phase 2 was specific to your MOS, for example, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, but I think the intel field has more like continuing education. It would need to, I suppose, depending on which branch of it you're in, because if you're in signals, that stuff changes. If you're
you go to a lot of specific schools, but that's. You still have the standards. So they had BNOC, ANOC, which turned into ALC and SLC, and now maybe it's changed again. I don't know. But anyways, so you have the standard, which we didn't have 2 phases of ALC. For us, it was just the one. You go through your little Common Core stuff and knock that out there, and you had the online training as well. But then you go through that. But no, there are a lot of courses that you'll go to. A lot of stuff up in DC. A lot of stuff up in the Beltway, and it's just job specific. Like you'll have your basic stuff, which is like critical thinking and nonsense like that, more for 10-level dudes. But then you have some higher level courses that you'll go to depending on what your job, what your mission set is. So,
And how does that change when you go to warrant school? I mean, you're supposed to be a subject matter expert at that point.
Yeah. You go through the basic course first, you go through walks first. That's obviously, it's like 4 weeks of basic training again. Dudes yelling at you, being silly. And oddly enough, I saw a lot of dudes get really.
Wait, who are the cadre for that?
It's warrants. So you got all these W3s running around there, the tax. And they're all screaming at you. And at that point, I'd been a senior non-commissioned officer for years. I knew the game. So I just stood there at attention. And let them scream at me. Yes, sir. No, sir. Roger, sir. Whatever. And that's it. But you would see dudes getting bent out of shape. Be like, I'm a sergeant first class. Like, I don't have to put up with this. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Like, you're nothing anymore. You're a candidate. Just let it go. But a lot of that nonsense. But after you do the 4 weeks of silliness, that rite of passage, whatever, you go to your basic course and you knock out a Common Core, which is about a month long. And then you actually get into deeper stuff. And so they actually hit you pretty hard with that, like really get into your job set, and it's focused more on what a warrant technician is going to do. It's advise, assist, train, do those things so that you can provide that gap between your non-commissioned officers and your enlisted to the officer side of the house, and be that actual subject matter expert, that trainer, that guy who dials that stuff in. And then everything else you just pick up on the job. Like I was a targeting officer for several years, and you just learn that stuff as you go. Yeah, I went through CENTCOM's several of their courses. I can't even remember the name of them, but I went through several of their courses for targeteers. But really, it's actually getting out there in country and getting your hands on stuff and just doing the job and figuring it out. So,
And what's your role from collections to analysis to dissemination? What's your role exactly? When you're a warrant officer like that.
for all source, we direct collection. So as we put out our requests for what we're looking for, we got our Shoemate guys, our SIGINT guys, our GeoInt guys, all those dudes, the single int specialties going out there and collecting against those requests, and then we take that, smash it all together, try to make something out of it, and redirect that. And it's a constant cycle. So if I've got a Shoemate guy who's got somebody in a box and he's interrogating them and trying to get information out of him, it's important that you have an all-source guy there as well who can say, hey, we need to know about this. We need to know about this. You let them do their job. They're never the guy in the box is never seeing you, but you're directing that Shoemater to do that collection so that you can make the picture.
Yeah.
So,
well, you never really. I mean, I guess somebody at some point did, but most people never start that process from scratch because there's always something going on in the battle space before you get there.
Yeah, and that was the difference with Iraq and Afghanistan. We had years of legacy intel. We had every platform in the world overhead. In fact, all right. So this has actually been a crutch of guys who have operated in that environment for years, specifically special operations. Being in fourth battalion, their intelligence setup is different than the rest of the battalions. You have the MIDs in the rest of battalions, so your military intelligence detachments, but then you have a fusion cell in 4th Battalion. And the fusion cell is not a thing that creates something for the Jedburgh teams as they go out there and do their stuff. So they came to us, and this team sergeant was pretty upset, and he said, I need intel. And first of all, one of the things he said was, can you guys requisition a satellite or something? I'm like, dude, at no point in your career will you ever be cool enough to get a satellite pulled in, ever. That's like director of the CIA stuff. But also, you are the intel. Your job is to go out there in this obscure environment, get in your truck, drive the roads, collect the intel, take pictures, map everything out, and give it to us so that we can fuse it. It's completely different than the rest of the military where intel drives operations. No, in fact, in this case, you drive operations, you are collecting, and we're just putting it together as a back end for what you're doing. And so you had a lot of guys that were used to operating in that environment, used to having every ISR platform in the entire arsenal available to them, any air asset, anything. And it's not the case. Like in real world, you've just got to figure out what is the problem, and I'm going to go collect against it. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to what degree are you in, strategic planning meetings with general officers and their staff? You know what I mean? Because if I'm doing this, for example, I was VP of marketing at Black Rifle. I want to know what the fucking point is. I need to know exactly what we're trying to do, what goals we're trying to hit. Otherwise, my job is meaningless.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Now, obviously, there's some separation. You're not getting the PDB and making collection decisions based on that necessarily. But there's got to be some level of overview. Here's what we're doing in our battle space. But with the way that intelligence works, I need to know what everybody around me is doing and working on as well. At least
Sure.
not necessarily to break any kind of compartmentalization, but to know that we're not duplicating effort and all this other bullshit that tends to happen.
Well, and there's a lot of leeway as a warrant to go out there and do what you have to do. But specifically to your question, for most of your jobs, you're gonna be sitting there with the S3, either a battalion, brigade, division, G3, whatever, and working that stuff out, and then they go directly with the boss. But when I was a targeteer, when I was doing intel support to targeting, it was very different. I was in there with the director of 1-star general on a regular basis, listening to the conversations, telling him what it looked like on the ground, what we needed to do to get after what he's trying to do. And so it was very different in the targeting realm. But no, typically it's like any other staff. You're not going directly to the boss. You might sit there and listen to the boss. Every once in a while he'll call on you, but no, you're coordinating with your S3 and doing everything as a normal staff function.
There's a couple of things I want to get into now, and they have to do with, I guess, the efficiency and virtue in the Department of Defense. At some point, the officer class became a political aristocracy, right? And that is what it is. Like there's, you're gonna have factions. James Madison was pretty clear about that, writing in the Federalist Papers and even prior public and private statements that factions will exist. And he kind of took this from David Hume, but factions are going to exist, so let's manage the factions and make them stand for something, right? It's a good thing that we have a right that's concerned about conserving and a left that's concerned about empathy, right?
Sure.
Those are good. I mean, obviously you see that in nature. So those are good things to have, and you have to manage those things. But without virtue, that kind of thing becomes quickly and sometimes irreversibly corrupt, which I think is the state that we see ourselves in now. And you can set, like, there's very obvious recent evidence of this with the COVID stuff, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it's a shocking betrayal of how bad the officer corps and the U.S. military had become. That the Wolfowitz doctrine from the early 90s, which is that we can democratize the Middle East, they'll greet us as heroes and blah, blah, all this stuff, couched in some other things, obviously, but that was a big component of it, persisted beyond the first fucking meeting where it was introduced to anybody that had been there, including in the first Gulf War, right? Anybody that had any idea of how culture and politics works in the Middle East would have been able to immediately tell you that that's not a thing. That's not going to happen.
Right.
This is nonsense, and we're about to send a bunch of people to die for no fucking reason, right? And that's what happened. But I'm curious because I haven't seen a whole host of memoirs of general officers who stood up and said no to this stuff in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I had an interesting conversation with this. I'll just tell you, he's a prominent colonel out there, and I'll tell you offline who he is. But he's a prominent colonel out there in the conservative element, 06 type. I'll give you some more meat. He was a Gulf War hero, actual Valor Award. He was classmates with Petraeus, McChrystal, several other folks, and I had the pleasure of sitting there as he went on an hour rant about how retarded these guys were. Just the biggest pieces of shit and dumbasses he's ever met in his life. And it was kind of eye-opening, but he told me why. It wasn't just that he hated them or whatever else. He didn't necessarily hate them. He just told me what a bunch of lackeys and stooges they were for the complex. And so, I don't even know how you crack this open without jumping into a massive rant. But we obviously have an out-of-control military-industrial complex who are factually focused on their bottom line, rolling out bombs and bullets. And who are the folks who make that happen for them? It's the general officers. So basically, there's this, and I try to draw this picture of this cyclical wheel of the folks who nominate these general officers are the Senate. So the Senate nominates whoever for stars. Those folks are getting nominated for stars through the military-industrial complex because they've done that work. They've carried that water for the system. And so when the MIC goes to Congress and it lobbies them with hundreds of millions of dollars, they're telling them exactly who they want to get promoted. So it just goes round and around and around. So we're not getting the best and the brightest necessarily. We're getting the most adept, the most the people who are going to keep the system in place. And if you know anything about flag officers in particular, they have two number one priorities. Number one, protect their branch at all costs, protect the military, and the second is protect the flag officer corps.
Right.
And they do not deviate outside that. So you're never going to get these people who break with the system, who go outside of it. They exist within it. And if they have any kind of moral hindrance to something that's taking place, they're gonna be quiet about it and just kind of redirect around it and do this, what we're kind of seeing now, which is malicious compliance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. We've kind of reduced general officer promotion from being the result of any kind of sustained excellence in a particular field, right? Infantry, armor, chem, and intel, whatever it is, right? That's what you would think that's what it should be, or just maybe being a great leader. And instead, it's this long checklist of diverse assignments like joint billets and a tour at the Pentagon and this thing and that thing, graduate degrees, command at multiple levels, even though like that doesn't necessarily why does a guy, for example, who is a company commander and has shown great skill at being a battalion, brigade, XO or something like that, why does he need to go take a battalion before he can go take a brigade or whatever?
Why,
that
indeed.
doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? The guy is either right for the job or he's not. And it seems like you created this like formal process as a means of designating who is and is not qualified to be a commander of men. And that is not how you determine if somebody is a commander of men. I mean, if you believe in that, then let's do it this way. Let's have interviewless hires. You just show me your packet and I decide if I'm going to hire you or not. No company on earth would agree to that.
No.
That is fucking stupid, right?
It is.
So, these, that plus the fact that we have way too many 07s and above, it's completely unnecessary, the amount of billets
it's
we
egregious.
have for stuff. But yeah, it's like 40 to 50% of today's 3 and 4-star generals have spent significant time in program management. Like, okay, man, that's cool and all. Being able to check boxes is sweet, but there's something deeper in managing human beings in a warfighting capacity that you need to have that doesn't exist with any of these people that we're talking about. We think of them as like exceptional because they've become leaders at the highest level, but they got literally everything wrong. You know what I mean? Like a guy shows up dressed really nice for the test and gets an F, he's still got a fucking F.
It's a fact.
It's like, oh, his resume looked great. What happened? Well, that resume didn't mean shit. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And we're hiring generals based on resume.
And I'll tell you, we're doing the same thing with senior enlisted as well. No, I'm not talking about E7s, E8s, whatever. That's a different conversation, a whole different rabbit hole. But I know the nominative process for the E9 to get those billets for those general officers. One of the perks of doing terminal CWO is the amount of people I've talked to over the years. I mean, thousands of people, all the way up to I had a guy, a 2-star general in the Pentagon at one point who was filling up my inbox. That was frustrating because I told him to stop being a pussy and do something about it, but he just couldn't. So anyways, going back to the nominative process, it is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Incestual. It's very incestual. And these guys make sure that the ones that they want to get selected and picked up for the same ideological reasons that you see a lot of flag officers and these other senior officers get picked up for, they're doing the same thing in the E9 nominative process. And it's grimy. And I've talked to at least a dozen sergeants major who have given me the ins and outs, and everything they're saying matches up with the collective. And it's just, it is such a grimy, ancestral process of getting picked up to lead those positions. And like you said, why are some of these folks getting picked up? It's just who they know, what they've done, what they say, and a lot of them have no business being in front of troops, but they've managed to check the right boxes over the years, and here they are.
Yeah, and then there's you mentioned the military-industrial complex. I want to go through some of the mechanics on how it produces it works actively to promote the wrong kind of people into leadership positions. So the jobs require typically defending weapons programs, whether they're good or bad, right? But you're not just defending the weapon program itself. You're defending its necessity, the efficiency that it's made, the fucking time frame within which it can be made, the cost, all this stuff, right? So to survive, officers on the come up, and this starts before general officer level. There's plenty of majors and fucking colonels in procurement as well, right? They learn to downplay technical risk, cost overruns, schedule delays, exactly the opposite of what an actual subject matter expert would do. Like literally the polar opposite of what a man that you want in that job to do. And they become practiced at delivering optimistic briefings that are completely irrational, just like the Wolfowitz Doctrine that led us into fucking 2 wars that didn't make sense. And then, of course, there's this revolving door into the defense industry once they retire. There's no law against, and apparently it's not even gauche, for defense contractors to openly recruit retiring generals and admirals precisely because of their access and influence. This episode is brought to you by Cape. Traditional carriers like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile have made headlines again and again for data breaches and surveillance scandals. These companies are often ISP conglomerates whose business models go beyond providing you with connectivity to actively collecting and selling your personal data to ad networks and data brokers, and that's why you're getting weird phone calls and emails all the time. Well, many people use tools like VPNs, as do I, encrypted messenger apps, private browsers, etc., to protect themselves, but app-based solutions can't fix vulnerabilities at the network level. Once the data transmits over the line, then you lose some control over it. And this is where Cape comes in. Founded in 2022 by experts in telecom, cybersecurity, and national security, Cape is a secure mobile carrier providing premium cellular service just like AT&T or Verizon, but designed with privacy and security as its first principle. It has all sorts of features like minimal data collection, SIM swap protection, enhanced signaling protection, which is systems are designed for operability, not security. These are designed for security. Encrypted voicemail protects a lot of your sensitive info, and then private payment. Card info is tokenized, and you don't have to provide additional info. So Cape is an MVNO, which means we lease access to major carrier infrastructure, just like Mint Mobile, just like T-Mobile's infrastructure. They lease T-Mobile's infrastructure. However, most American MVNOs are quote-unquote light MVNOs. This means that while the MVNO may present as a different company, the underlying mobile core and subscriber SIMs are still from the underlying carrier, which means you are subject to whatever infrastructure problems that T-Mobile or whomever else has. Cape is a heavy MVNO. This means that while we also lease access to physical infrastructure from other carriers, we actually own our own mobile core and provision our own SIMs. Cape is the only privacy-focused carrier in the country that owns and operates its own mobile core. No other carrier provides this set of capabilities. They take security seriously. They partner with Proton, the email service that you've probably heard of, Proton Mail, EFF. They partner with Graphene, which we use for payment processing already. So if this all sounds good to you and you want to protect yourself against security breaches, go to cape.co/citizen and use the code CITIZEN33 for 33% off Cape for 6 months. Again, that's cape.co/citizen. Use the code CITIZEN33 for 33% off Cape for 6 months.
If you need an example, look no further than the ACUs. All right. Everybody knew that uniform was shit.
Yeah.
From the moment that it was even conceptualized and was in the lineup, people were laughing at how stupid it looked. What you just described, how they're practiced in, basically it's a psyop. It's just propaganda. They are practiced in giving these optimistic briefs.
Trust me,
they don't,
bro.
Yeah, they don't just do it to panels of people and boards. They do it across the media. They had to build momentum for this trash uniform. Why? Why they were so insistent on getting this clearly belligerently garbage uniform out into the force, I will never know, but they did. And so these optimistic briefs, and then you start going, maybe it is as good as they say. I mean, I'm no expert on camouflage. Maybe it really did pass some scientific test and it just miraculously keeps me hidden from the enemy. But it didn't.
Yeah, because you run into a lot of like pastel greens out in combat.
Right.
Fuck, man. And then so a 2021 GAO report found that between 2014 and 19, 77% of 4-star generals and admirals took jobs with defense contractors within 2 years of retirement.
Yeah.
That should be illegal.
Should be. Yeah. I mean, we have waivers for guys who are taking cabinet positions. So why should it be any different for a system that they literally helped make tens of millions and billions in some cases dollars, and yet they get that job afterwards?
Yeah, and then you get this happened post Vietnam. I guess maybe as a function of there being more eyeballs on the force, more media exposure, and thus more attention, negative and positive. But this the Goldwater-Nichols Act, creation of joint promotion system, made relief of senior officers very rare. It takes an act of Congress now to relieve a general officer from their position, which that should not be the case. His boss should be able to fire him because that's how bosses fucking work.
That's how bosses work.
What it created was what we call a zero defect culture. A zero defect culture means the safest path to 4 stars is to never have a strong opinion that can actually be proven wrong, right? So instead of having subject matter experts saying, no, you're wrong, here's what's right, or not even addressing somebody else's opinion, saying, hey, here's a paper on exactly the right way to do this. We know this from all of history, technology, whatever. You don't see that anymore. You don't see that anymore because there are there have been like military officers who said, and I'm not going to name any names here, but they've said things like hypersonic weapons are largely a marketing gimmick. It's like, I'm sorry, a weapon system that can evade your intercept is not a marketing gimmick, my friend. They said that because we were behind at the time on that. That's why they really said it. And everybody knew it too, but that is the kind of person that gets promoted. And, you know, it creates a very powerful incentive, implicit incentive, which is a very hard thing to address. Like if you torpedo a bad program, for example, telling Congress that the F-35 can't dogfight, for example. They say, like, and the F-35 is a fine aircraft. Just don't tell me it can dogfight. I know it can't, right? So, you know, but that was the thing. It's like, oh yeah, it can do everything. It can do everything. It's like, okay, well, you know, so can Cheesecake Factory, but it doesn't do anything particularly good, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, there was a program that we'll just call it off the books program. I'll caveat this by saying there's nothing cool about me, but I was in that world for a long time. And there was a program that was meant to bring all of it was a certain data set across all the branches. So all the branches have a component of what I just described earlier when I gave my introduction, doing that kind of work. And it was supposed to be a one-stop shop where people's information goes in, it's stored, it's protected, it's sitting on a certain system, and the system that was in place was actually fine. It was just a little interspersed, and everybody had their own version of it. But this one-star admiral had chalked up the bill to $2.1 billion on this program, which I want to stress this to you. This is a data repository. This is literally Microsoft Excel.
I've got to get on. I'm a company RTO in a fucking gunfight. This is real world experience. We're taking fire, complex fire from the north of our position. One of our guys is already down, bleeding out in the street, and he did die. And I call and say, hey, we've got Apaches on station. I can see them. Fucking have them just strafe this road. They don't have to kill anybody. Just strafe this road. And they go, oh, we need a full colonel or above approval to do that. I'm sorry, what? I'm fucking getting shot at, dude. But this dude can authorize $2.1 billion in bullshit.
$2.1 billion, and they scrapped the whole thing. Now, keep in mind, this was an Excel data sheet on crack. That's all it was. It was just a repository to put people's names in, their other components of who they were, and a bunch of other stuff. Without getting into specifics, it was nothing more than an Excel data sheet. They spent $2.1 billion and then scrapped it, and you never heard about it because it was technically a black program. It didn't exist.
I mean, how much you've got to wonder how much money has disappeared into that fucking ether. You know what I mean?
We know all the stories. We know the trillions of dollars that have gone missing.
I just mean, like, if you're somebody that's cozy with DIA or any of the 3-letter agencies that are outside the DOD, and you have the ability to fucking present a project like that, and even if you know it's going to fail, you're like, well, you know,
it's not my money.
Yeah, it's not my money. It's just the people.
Right.
Man, And it's so very common that stuff like that happens.
And you'll never know about it because it's classified.
Yeah.
There's no transparency on it. It doesn't hit any books. Nobody sees it. It gets rolled into spending money on hammers and whatever else. We all know the stories. And you'll never know about it. So you can't even protest. You can't even go to your congressman and say, I have a problem with this, because you don't know about it.
Yeah.
And you never will.
Yeah, well, the Constitution was made for a moral people, as
Correct.
John Adams liked to say. And, there's another phrase, liberty without virtue is anarchy, and virtue without liberty is tyranny. These are two sides of the same coin, and the DOD seems to have lost that. Like, I don't know what they think their mission is. I would be curious. Like, I've talked to a lot of the upper level leadership, the Army Chief of Staff.
Sure.
Some of these people are actually friends of mine. Like Donahue is one of the best general officers that I've ever come into contact with. It's very rare that you meet a general officer, particularly one that comes from special operations, that all the enlisted special operations people love. That's an odd thing. I don't know what your experience with that has been. There's a couple out there, but
There are just a few out there.
Most of the time it's just like, that guy, he was all right, kind of a dick, but whatever.
Call him a soldier's general or something like that when they're like that. Yeah.
But it's rare, few and far between, and it just makes me like, I wonder, without provocation, without instruction at all, it seems like a good idea for Hegseth to have all the commanders and anybody that's a fucking general officer in the military write him like a one-pager on what the goal of the DOD is, and see, because I would be. This isn't about calling anybody out for having wrong ideas, because the apparatus has failed these people as well by not forcing them. I mean, guardrails are important in life. When you put people into positions, you have to force them into doing the right thing. That's the purpose of instruction and guardrails, right? Consequences matter. And they have been not in a consequence-free environment, but the consequences have been directed towards the type of traits that we want instead of the type of traits that we want to get rid of, right? So it's been inverted. I think something like that would be very interesting, to be honest, to see where exactly these people's heads are at.
Yeah, I do too. There's 2 points in there that I think about. I think about the reason that UCMJ was able to be what it was before versus what it is now. You have UCMJ has always been subject of the command's decision, but once upon a time, I think you had a more moral person who was filling those ranks. And don't give me a bunch of examples of bad officers in the past. I'm aware bad people have always existed, but I think overall, collectively, our officer corps was made of better men than it's made of now. And when you have that ideological perversion and pollution like we've seen over the last 20 or so years in the officer ranks, specifically in the field grade and higher collective, you're going to get a lot more agenda and ideologically based decisions where things get swept under the rug. The UCMJ is bastardized. And ultimately, these people, and I've seen this firsthand, specifically when the JAG Officer Corps, you have these people who think they are on a noble and righteous path to save our democracy. Save our democracy. Those are their words. I'm not saying we have a democracy. I know we have a republic. I get it. But they say we got to save our democracy. And these people really do believe that they're doing a righteous thing by subverting and maliciously complying with the commander-in-chief and his staff. And that's where we're at. And thank you to, actually, I can't even say fully thank you to Obama. This started, we can see the trail ends of this if you talk to veterans during the Clinton years, but this ideological push towards a further left, and I'm not talking about classic liberalism, I'm talking about extreme leftism, started in the mid to late 90s, and it was like Obama threw rocket fuel on it. It was just off to the races after that. We went from promoting people on their warfighting prowess. How many general officers were known for just being absolute badasses in the first part of this century, to those who were promoted based off their ideological preferences and their leftist leaning proclivities. It's a stark contrast.
I think there's we've got one of the core cultural values in 2025 has become loyalty over competence in the DoD, right? And that's you've got to split some hairs here because it's a nuanced conversation. The president is a commander in chief, and you as a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coastie, and what's the other one? Space Forcean? I don't know what they call themselves.
Oh, they call themselves Guardians. That's right.
Oh, God.
Guardians. Right. I'm sure they weren't happy about that decision either.
It's not as bad as the baseball team being called Guardians, but that's still pretty gay. Yeah, so you owe some measure of loyalty to the elected commander in chief. He is the representative of the will of the people, right?
Yeah.
And the Constitution imbibes him with authority to conduct war on our behalf and treaties and all sorts of other stuff. Fair enough. That is a completely separate issue from the virtue with which you approach the job. You still have to be a good man. I mean, we've got these Army core values that people, you see them in basic training, and then again, if you get an Article 15 sometimes, and that's pretty much it. But, you know, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke. And those aren't the same thing, you know. I mean, we need people who are who have moral courage, I guess, is what we're lacking now. You know, people that are willing to say no when no is the correct answer. And you should be. Like, if I have a scout, he's my point man, and he's up ahead of the rest of the unit, and he says, hey, there's a fucking company-sized element up there, and they've got intersecting fields of fire with machine guns. I'm like, all right, cool. You don't know what you're talking about because you're a private, so we're going. Right. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're all going to die then, right? That's fucking stupid. So there's got to be some level of, as you mentioned, I guess we could call it commander's intent with regard to military justice, or just the administration of the military at large. And that's not what we have.
No.
Right? Not even close.
Well, we saw it with COVID. You mentioned it earlier. But, you know, for anybody who doesn't know who I am, that was my fight. That was my namesake for years, was fighting against the unlawful implementation. It's important to say not the unlawful mandate, but the unlawful implementation, because you had a lawful memo from the Secretary of Defense stating that the COVID vaccine would be given under FDA-approved drug, but there was no FDA-approved
right?
drug. Technically, yes.
Yeah, and EUA is a bit different, but...
Oh, it's you can't mandate that somebody takes an EUA, and that's all we had.
Yeah.
But then Terry Adram came out and said that they were interchangeable, and so you had this entire military. You had 99% of the military that was saying it's just a vaccine like anything else. We have to take vaccines. We're ordered to take vaccines. They didn't know the law, and so the relatively few thousands who stood up and said, no, this is actually illegal. You can't force me to take an EUA drug. That's moral courage in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, so people, one of the biggest rebuttals to what you just said would be, well, you guys all took swine flu vaccine, which was, by the way, 60 years old, not new. And then the biggest one, though, is anthrax. They'll say anthrax vaccine. Do you have any idea what year the first anthrax vaccine was developed?
I think it was somewhere around 97.
1881.
1881, yes. Okay. A little bit off there.
And the human version, this is for animals, by Louis Pasteur from Pasteurization, obviously. And then the human version, the first one came out in the 1940s and was licensed by the 1970s. A modified version was used in the 1950s as well. So I didn't personally want to take any of that shit. I didn't. After the first... anthrax vaccine, I was like, this is stupid. We're not getting hit with anthrax.
Yeah.
Come on. And if we do, I'll fucking die, I guess. I don't care. But then they tried right after that, after we got back from a deployment, was when H1N1 swine flu was out. And they're like, you got to go get a shot. I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you do. I went to the fucking to the docks, and the major up there was just like, you could tell he was a crusty old fucking dude, and he didn't care. He was just like, you got to get this shot. I'm like, no, you do. I said, no, I don't, sir. You need to check my name off of that box. That's what needs to happen, but I don't need to get any shot because there's no like legal requirement for me to get this. He goes, yeah, there is. You're in the Army. You're subject to certain things. I'm like, yeah, but I've got a religious exemption. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, religious. I just said I'm religious.
There you go.
Exempt. And you don't really have the ability to ask me anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Like one of the things in common law is precedent, right? Has this been historically applied in the way that you're applying it? The answer to that is yes. If people have said no to certain things like that in the past, the answer was always, okay, hands off. That's where the ADA gets its ruling on random people in authority can't ask you what your disability is if you have some need, dog, whatever else it is. They can only ask if it's a service animal. That's it. And you can say yes. Sure. Now fuck off, right?
Yeah, right.
That's but there's a reason. I know people abuse that system now, but the underlying philosophy for that rule came from this idea of informed consent, right? Which is a phrase that came up a lot, but
it sure did.
In the military, not necessarily. So this moral cowardice, as I like to call it, got dressed up as empathy and inclusivity and even patriotism, right? Like, you don't care about your buddies if you don't. And it's the same fucking mind game that they always try. It's like, do you want a trans kid or a dead kid? Do you want to drive cars now, or do you want to plant it in 10 years? Like, fuck you, dude. You're not gonna use moral blackmail against me, especially when I can see the results in front of my fucking face. None of these other vaccines that have ever been used on Department of Defense members, whether it's on the civilian side or on the actual fucking military side, has ever been an experimental vaccine. Never. It's never happened, nor should it, but it did.
It did. It did. 100%.
And nobody fucking stopped it.
Right? And they could have produced the non-experimental version, but
the J&J
they didn't.
one?
No, not even the J&J one. Not even that one was.
Or was
FDA
it the
approved.
German one?
No, it was the Pfizer Comirnaty. They did not. Well, Moderna came out with one later allegedly, but they didn't produce it either. They had a FDA approved version. It was called Comirnaty, and they kept sticking BioNTech in people because Pfizer said, we're not going to produce Comirnaty until we get rid of all these billions of vials of the EUA that we produced. And so it was, it's a logistical fact that it did not exist in the medical catalog. It still doesn't exist. They still are administering the EUA, and that was the issue. Look, Army, DOD, if you wanted to do this right, you could have either had the president order it, which he didn't, or you could have just told Pfizer, hey, produce the FDA approved version, and then there would have been no legal basis to fight it.
I think the fact that the president didn't tells you one of two things. Either they are so aristocratic they don't think they need to follow the rules, which is probably part of it. I think that's probably part of it. But the more obvious answer is that nobody in the White House wanted their fucking fingerprints on this shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, even Austin didn't break the law. He issued a legal memo. It was the folks underneath him who broke the law. And yeah, he knew better. He didn't want his fingerprints on that. I mean, at the end of the day, when you have Nuremberg 2.0, they're going to be coming for heads. And unfortunately, as big of a piece of shit as Austin is, he's not the guy you can come after because he didn't break the law.
Yeah. No,
he allowed it, but...
This is the result of institutionalized risk aversion. You don't think about that in association with the Nazis, by the way, but that's exactly what it was. People were afraid to say no, and as a result, they would say yes to horrible shit. And I was just following orders is not an excuse.
Nope.
And we've proven that with trials at this point, right? Moral courage is got to be like... I won't say that it's the most important trait to be a leader, but it's in the top whatever. Like there's some non-negotiables. You have to have moral courage to be a leader. Otherwise, you're no leader. If you're in a leadership position with no moral courage, then really what you are is a blind bus driver. You know what I mean? Heading towards a fucking cliff.
The irony is we're in an organization that has more physical courage than any organization in the world. I mean, we're talking about guys who have done unbelievably heroic things over the last 25 years. And yet the amount of moral courage we have is...
Millie jumped into fucking Panama. He's not a pussy. He's a fucking Green Beret that jumped into Panama. You know what I mean? And still got caught up in all this bullshit.
Yep. That's a
so
fact.
It's like that. Those are, again, it's a good point you're making. You got to separate those two things. Just because the guy was a good soldier doesn't mean he's a good leader. And we've seen that. How many times have you seen that? A guy gets promoted because he's been in for long enough. It's like, all right, well, and then a guy doesn't get promoted because he hasn't been in long enough, or he didn't do the right assignments,
or runs fast, has big muscles, looks the part, whatever the case is. It's not the
certainly at its core, the military is about closing with and destroying the enemy and all the components of that, from the action itself to the aftermath and the prior collection of information and logistics that happen.
Yeah.
It's all, but it's all directed towards that. But you know, a nail gun's job is to fire nails into things. Certainly, okay, cool. If it was just a mindless nail driving machine and didn't have the mechanics behind it, then it doesn't work properly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Then it's still heavy. You can still drive a nail in with it, technically. Still technically a nail driver, but is it? Is it functional in the way that we need it to be? And you know, these it's so interesting to see. I think if you follow the dilution of esprit de corps in the military, it almost runs parallel to all the woke infectious bullshit.
100%, dead on.
It's like as risk aversion became,
we saw it mid 2000s,
yeah,
and it started to slowly ebb off.
As moral cowardice was dressed up as empathy and inclusivity, and risk aversion became institutionalized, and the result of that was the erosion of personal responsibility. It's postmodernism essentially, right? But just on this scale. And then expertise gets subordinated to ideology and feelings. We are the ultimate meritocracy. We succeed or the country doesn't exist anymore. And in the micro level, we succeed or people die. It is the ultimate meritocracy. There's no room for this fucking bullshit at any level. Like there's no like, oh, they're just administrators, let them do what they want. No, because administrators make decisions that make fucking impacts on the battlefield.
Look at the JAG Corps.
Yeah,
they literally hold the commanders by the balls. Commanders won't even wipe their ass without JAG's approval. And that's how bad the system has gotten. And that's why the JAG Corps has been attacked the way it's been attacked. You know, they have tried to pervert and flood institutions of higher learning. And basically when you have these folks come in at the lower level, they identify who's who, what's the term, who's who in the zoo, and then they start pulling those guys up to higher positions. By the time you get to these senior major into lieutenant colonel positions, you have already been groomed, and they're preparing you for those high level appointments in the Pentagon.
Yeah, and then there's, you know, it's to your point before about separating the gunfighter, if you want to call him that, from the leader who's got moral courage. We've seen inside of the military where of all the places it doesn't make sense, it's here. The collapse of masculine virtues like stoicism and candor and duty.
Stoicism, that's a good word.
Into like, it's a caricature now. It's a caricature of like, and you see it with fake masculinity, you can always see it. It's a guy who's like puffed up, trying to talk fast and loud. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not what a man talks like. I have a perfect
example, and I can't say it right now.
A man just fucking looks at you like this with his knife hand out and says, shut the fuck up, right? Every now and again, he'll get elevated, but for the most part, he's calm and collected. And that's what men were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, forever, actually, throughout all of human history. And now, you know, it's mocked as toxic or outdated or whatever, or you know, there's some moral leverage against that, like, oh, you just don't care. Like, no, I care deeply. That's why I'm not overreacting and making bad decisions.
Sure.
You don't care. You're emotional. You're letting your emotions drive your decisions. You don't care. You care about your feelings right now. I care about all of this into perpetuity. That's the difference, right? And then the result of that are officers who quietly accept flawed strategies to keep their star alive. That's it, right? And whether it be from command decisions coming from on high or the JAG officers nipping at their ass, right? Either way, it's moral cowardice. I mean, if we had politicians that were afraid of making sensible laws or whatever because the judiciary may come after them, then we don't have a legislative branch. We have a bunch of bitches, right? Which is kind of what we have, but not for that reason. I'm just saying. It's completely unacceptable, and I'm glad that Hexeth is there. You know, you're never going to agree with anybody on everything necessarily, but just telling people to stop being fat is pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
It needs to be said.
Everybody wants, I liked what he did with, look, I'm a sergeant, but at heart, I'm always going to be E4 Mafia. Yeah, I want a fucking beard. Come on.
Yeah.
But do I think that the force can be trusted to manage that bright responsibly? Fuck no, man.
Nobody's
He's
going to
all
grow a
the-
beard like that,
Yeah.
and you know
Yeah.
this. So.
No, he's like, all of you assholes are just, none of you are fucking Nordic pagans. Shut the fuck up. I thought it was really funny the way he handled it. Also, there's no, like,
It was a great speech.
Nordic paganism, it's not compulsory to have a beard, by the way, but even if it was, I thought it was really funny. So just like a dude being a dude and saying, hey, you know what? It's fucking fun and games and shit, but shut the fuck up. That's what I want out of, like, when I think about a first sergeant or a sergeant major, that's what I think about.
100%.
Is a dude who's just like, haha, that's a good joke, dude. Now go fucking do push-ups. Like, he enjoys the thing, but also here comes the boot.
And I think what you described is 1,000 cuts, digging into the soul and the fabric of this nation, because everything you described as far as what men used to be in the 50s and now, and all of these efforts made in the military and everything else, you couldn't just come at this with one line of effort. You had to have all these converging lines of effort meant to reduce who we were as a people, even destroy our belief in our foundation in the Constitution. And I always bring this up as an example. There was a colonel at Benning a few years ago during COVID who told a room full of company commanders, he said, references to the Constitution are a dog whistle for white supremacy.
That guy would have been relieved of command immediately.
Yes. It's insane. But this is the mindset and the ideology.
You literally swore a fucking oath to the Constitution, bitch.
Right. That is the only thing.
What's that guy's name? He doesn't deserve to hide.
I would out him right now if I remembered. I will get his name and I will shoot it to you just so you know who it is. But yeah, he was. And so you see this ideological perversion of people who think that the Constitution is bad, think that they have a moral responsibility to fight back against these toxic masculinity, trans haters, LGBTQ haters, whatever the case is, and they're doing the right thing for humanity. And ultimately, what does that turn into? When that order is issued, which I believe will be inevitable someday, but when that order is given to round up Americans and put them in camps for whatever the case, and we saw it pretty close during COVID. We saw it happen in Australia. We were
Canada too. Canada was a little bit lighter because they put you in a hotel room and not a fucking literal.
Oh, it was
camp.
close though. We saw it in South Korea. They did this in South Korea. Not South Koreans. I'm talking about the military. They were rounding people up based on contact tracing, putting them in wagons and taking them into isolated barracks. A woman who was postpartum had her baby with her, and they went and put her in a dirty, mold-infested barracks room. I mean, just some egregious examples of small pockets. And I'm telling you, at some point, this will be a thing. And if you don't have that moral courage to say, no, this is illegal, I will not do this, then you're gonna believe that you're doing the morally righteous thing. And that is what they are gearing towards.
Yeah, I mean, if the morally righteous thing is to follow orders, then we're in trouble.
Yeah,
because that's not how any of our system of government from the ground up was developed. I mean, that's one of the things, this divine right of kings that we reject as a fundamental principle in this country. It came about, I mean, you could say it started with the Magna Carta to some degree, even though, when Cicero and other people talked about the Roman Republic emperor, they would say stuff like this as well, but in practical form, it started with the Magna Carta, and it was like, even the king has to follow the law, right? Which means the deduction from that is very simple. Law, king. Even if there's a king, even if there's a monarch, the law comes first, always, right? Now map that onto a republic or even an institutional command like the military. That means what's right comes before who says it.
100%.
And you have a duty to reject unlawful orders. Now, this is the problem that with Lloyd Austin and other people, you talk about malicious enforcement and things like that, which is a lot of that happened as well. But even as somebody who, let's say you're a one-star that's on the staff of Lloyd Austin, for example, you can make the case very easily that yes, what you said is technically true if all the elements inside it are accurate. One of them is not. This is an EUA. So what you said doesn't apply. As such, it makes that an unlawful order, whether you knew it or not. right?
That's fair. That's valid.
So that is the way, and that's not to. Lloyd Austin's a piece of shit. Let's be real with that. But it's not a criminal act that he did. It's an ignorant act, and it should have been corrected by somebody on his staff, and it wasn't because everybody's a fucking pussy.
Well, and they tried to. We have evidence of a judge in the Air Force who took his complaint, and we have the email, took his complaint to the acting DJAG of the Air Force, so the top senior, legal entity at the time. Told her that this airman had made this complaint and he was valid in his reading of the law, and she did not reply to him for 2 weeks. And then within 2 hours of Terry Adram issuing her illegal memo saying they were interchangeable, she said, "We have an answer now." So they backdoored it and made a method through this. I mean, there was so many.
Don't we call it like parallel reconstruction in the intelligence business?
That's a good,
which
good
is kind of
term.
illegal.
Yeah, super illegal. What they did was criminal and conspiratorial on so many levels, and they did it anyways. Will we ever get justice? Many people say no. I pursue.
Justice would be a Department of War that behaves the way it's meant to.
Yeah.
I don't like going back and getting. I want everybody paid and reinstated and records cleaned wherever that's necessary. I think that should be 100% compliance. However, holding I think more important than holding specific individuals accountable for shit is to correct the system.
Yeah,
and part of it is
do
holding
too.
some certain people accountable, but you're only going to get one or two that were particularly egregious, right?
Terry Adram.
Yeah, like she specifically has to be. Something's got to be done about that.
It's a must. Otherwise, I agree. We need to be giving troops constitutional training. Why are we focused on sexual harassment and assault and cyber training and fill in the blank, but we don't even know what we swear an oath to?
Yeah, I mean, we could start with school. We could do that in schools too, before the military.
Be a thing.
Probably go back
civic,
that far. That's why I'm doing this Constitution series on Substack, because I've had alarming conversations with people who are, and I don't think they're bad faith actors, and I don't think they're stupid people either. They just don't know certain things. There is a reason we used a full excision of 2,300 years of Western civilization to decide on our government. And there was a great debate both before and after the Constitution was written.
There was.
Before with the Articles of Confederation, which failed because we didn't have the correct power in place. So people that are on the far side of libertarianism are like, look, we tried that shit and it didn't fucking work. We almost lost a country. The currency fucking went away. We didn't even have currency at the time. And the people that we call heroes, the smartest political philosophers ever, according to us, all said, you know what, like 10 years later, like, well, that was kind of dumb. Let's do it the right way this time. And, so many like great heroic figures during that time period. George Washington presided but didn't say a fucking word the entire time because he knew that if he said something, everyone would agree. You could read this in his memoirs after.
It's interesting.
He sat there and never said a word except to change the very last thing, which was how many people constituted a congressional district. Somebody said we should drop it from 40 to 30 so there's more, and he said, I agree. That's it. That was his contribution to the Constitution, because he knew that, one, he could be king because people were English still and they were used to a king, and he said no. So all these things that happen, and then of course there's the Federalist, anti-Federalist debate after that very heavily informed what would end up being in the Bill of Rights, which was part of the Constitution. They were like, a lot of these people, a lot of the founders were like, I don't want a constitution. I think it's going to create tyranny. It's going to create a king again. We don't want that. Blah blah blah. And they're like, all right, cool. So the compromise was, we're going to draft a constitution, but we're also going to draft a Bill of Rights that limits the federal government's power to only what's in this Constitution and these Bills of Rights. That's it. Well, that's the way it was supposed to be, right?
Interesting.
And there's a reason that we went through all of this stuff. So if you've got this idea that you think is novel about how we can fix or change government or a new way to do things, I really highly recommend you go spend some time learning about why we made the decisions we did, because it was all very pointed. Every single decision was deliberated by some of the smartest people that ever walked the face of this earth, and people that had just come out of tyranny but were the children of the liberty movement via the Protestant Reformation, and they knew the dangers of all this stuff. They knew that we needed an executive, but we needed to fucking curtail the power. They knew from Montesquieu and practice that we needed to separate powers, and Cicero as well. All these things led to the greatest country in the history of the fucking world. The average age of a constitutional republic is 20 years. We are going to hit 250 next year. So fuck you.
Right.
Read the goddamn documents, understand why we made the decisions we did, and fucking live that life, because that is what's required of you as a citizen. That's why I named the show this. Like, you're either going to do it or you're not, and you're going to get the government you deserve.
Yeah. That's a lot of really smart stuff that I did not know. But no, I agree. It is there's a duty of a citizen to get involved, and even if you don't go into the gnat's ass like you just did, which I should, even something as simple as voting. Yes, we've had obvious voting issues over the years, but if people came out and did their civic duty and just overwhelmed the system, they couldn't break that.
There's only so much you can fix.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, people show up. We can't, even in midterm elections, we can't be running out like 35, 40% votes. No. You got to fucking vote, man.
Right. I mean, the primaries here in Texas are obviously, I'm doing Doc's campaign, and so that's been something we've been looking into numbers wise. And the last primary, I think they had 1.9 million votes out of 18 million registered or eligible voters.
Good Lord.
And that's insane. And I think Allen West got like 400,000 votes or something. Don't quote me on those numbers, but we know what it would take to just win simply in a primary, just to primary somebody. But I don't believe in voting. That's stupid. We just get trash anyways. Like,
well, do
some work, man.
That's part of the psyop is nihilism.
Yeah.
Like, this system is bad and doesn't work. So these things come in two forms, and it's always designed to ride some wave into power. So from the postmodernist, neo-Marxist school, like the Frankfurt School style, you blackpill everybody and make them nihilist about the process.
Yeah.
And the thing that you're trying to do is twofold. One, you're trying, like, people that are good actors, you're trying to blackpill them and get them off of voting entirely. Most of those people are mid to high performers, so they're going to be fine no matter what. So it's not like their shit's being affected all that much. And then you go after the low performers and you tell them that everybody else is responsible for their bullshit.
Yeah.
And this is what Marxism does, and it rides the wave of minority oppression into power.
Yeah.
And then says, well, look, I know you guys did all the work here and overthrew this system, but obviously you can't manage it, so we're going to need to manage it for you. It's like the biggest rope-a-dope in fucking human history.
Well, and you got this guy sitting here right now, and I don't know if your cameras have that picked up or not, but you got this guy sitting here right now, and before you use that, if you haven't voted, then just get that out of your head, because until everybody is doing their civic duty, obviously if we turn into Venezuela, then we need to have another conversation. But you get all these boogaloo dudes who are talking about going this direction, and I'm like, no, not until you exercise everything available to you within the Constitution and the framework of this country.
Yeah, you got to eat your meat and vegetables before you get dessert, my friend.
Right, it's a fact.
Yeah, you don't we don't know. Well, that's not true. We do know that the system works quite well, actually, because people pre-technology made it work very well for a long time. And you can say that the tumult that we've had, a civil war or amendments to this degree or that, or illegal shit that went on for some time that had to get fixed through either amendments or legislation like Jim Crow and shit like that. All right, cool. Did the Constitution provide a remedy for that we used to fix it? Yes, it did, motherfucker. They gave us all the tools we would ever need. This was not written, the Constitution was not written for perfect people. It was written for human beings who were flawed. It wasn't written for the late 18th century. It was written for everyone for all time. These are the tools that you need to create a more perfect union, so long as you use them. And that's why Ben Franklin said it's a republic if you can keep it, right? And it's going to be your effort individually, and our efforts collectively will decide whether or not we keep it. That's it. It's not going to be guns or anything else. It's not going to be some fucking heroic last stand at the fucking White House or some shit like that. It's going to be whether you just decide to educate yourself and then live a virtuous life based on that education and perform your civic duty. That it'll be those three things. And if you can't even, Warren Farrell is a buddy of mine. He's psychologist that wrote that book, The Boy Problem. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's about like demasculization of boys and shit, which is funny because he's a fucking total liberal. But he wrote this book a while back and saw this problem coming a mile away. He's writing The Man Problem now, which is going to expound on it from the last like 10 or 15 years. But he tells this story about counseling. He's like, we conducted studies with husbands and wives and asked them if you would die for your partner to save their life. And if you remove kids from the situation, they both come in at about 90 to 93% yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if you can die for each other, certainly you can sit here and listen to each other, right? It's like, okay, cool. If you can fucking die and get all crazy for the Constitution and America and all that stuff, maybe you can learn about it. Maybe you can fucking vote. You know what I mean?
It's a hard thing to ignore. It's a hard statement to ignore. It's,
If you're not doing the basic shit, then I know from experience that I can't count on you to do the hard shit, which is why we have grooming standards, unfortunately.
Right.
But it is what it is. Stay off Sergeant Major's grass.
I'm sorry, but until you've seen some 21 and 22-year-old dudes who can't grow facial hair running around with wispies on their chin, you just can't be a part of that argument.
No.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell everybody, we're going to go get ready for the next show.
Cool.
But tell everybody where they can find you and all your stuff.
You can find me, I'm not doing anything crazy, but you can find me every once in a while. I blow something up on X at Samosaur, just like a dinosaur, put Sam in there. I made that handle as a joke, by the way, one day when that's a whole different story. But anyways, and that's really it. Every once in a while I post something on Instagram at Terminal CWO, but I'm not really doing that anymore. So.
And you guys got a documentary floating around?
Yeah, it's not my documentary, but there's a big one coming out. You can currently find it. It is not findable on YouTube, but it is open. So I put a link up in my bio on Terminal CWO on Instagram. The X account is fake. That is not me. And I recommend. It's a pre-teaser. It's a pre-release. They told me. I put out an 8-minute clip of us talking, both myself and Dr. Teresa Long the other day. But it's going to be a banger. They actually started that documentary prior to COVID, and they were talking about vaccines in general, and then they had to put it on hold, and now it's morphed into COVID. So it's going to be a good one, though.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. All right, cool. Well, go check out Samosaur, Sam Shoemate, all the stuff he does. Check out Doc Pete Chambers running for governor here in Texas.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Why didn't I say that? Doc Pete Chambers. I'm working on his campaign staff. Go primary Abbott. Seriously, stop this nonsense.
Even if Pete doesn't get elected or one of the others doesn't get elected, just putting your foot in this dude's ass so he starts acting. I mean, look at what he just today, Governor Wheelchair, as we affectionately call him, finally made the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE
You know
terrorist
why?
workers because Pete's been up their ass for fucking 6 months about it.
We released our how we're going to do this in September.
Yeah,
and
September 8th, I think.
If you do a side-by-side, they're identical. Abbott stole a candidate's, what he's going to do to the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE and made it his own, which, all right, I'm not saying he shouldn't. We should be doing that. He should have done it years ago, though.
Yeah, I mean, that is... The worst case scenario is you support a guy that's actually principled like Pete and force an unprincipled guy like Abbott to do his fucking job.
Right.
So get out and vote.
Just a forcing function.
That's it. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.